Anyway, it's nice to see
Adrian,
you.
it's nice to see you too. It is honestly an honor to have you on my podcast.
You.
Your story, who you are, everything you represent.
Thank you.
I realize where you've been, all the shows you've been on and stuff, and to be on mine is, like I said, it's an honor. I truly appreciate it. And I'm going to do my best to give you questions perhaps you've never heard before, or just find some different avenues because you're probably tired of talking about the same stuff all the
Oh,
time.
it's all right. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to be on the podcast and appreciate you taking the time. So I'll answer anything.
Thank
Almost,
you.
I guess, anything.
Almost. Yeah. So honestly, like I want to hit on that for just a moment. Whereas like I know some of the things that you've been through, perhaps the things we'll touch on and stuff. Like I don't want to dig into areas that perhaps aren't necessarily great for you to talk about. So if there are any of those questions or moments that you're like, hey, I want to steer clear, I want to
Yeah,
respect that. So please let me
totally.
know.
I'm an open book. I just don't ever use the terrorist name. I don't think you'll do that, but I have to say it. And then, yeah, that's other than that, I'm a real open book. So,
All right.
um,
Well, thank you. And by
yeah.
the way, I was looking up the word resilient the other day in the dictionary and I saw your face pop up.
That's so kind. Thank you.
Wow, what a
Thank you.
story this is going to be. I am excited for this conversation. When I
I am
invited
too.
you on, I was like, in all honesty, it's been a long time since I've like consistently checked my email to see if I've gotten a response. And when you said yes, I was like, yeah, hell yeah, this is going to be awesome. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, I am
Um,
too.
Thank you. And I saw you were speaking at MIT yesterday. That's
I
pretty
was.
freaking
Yeah,
great, right?
it was wonderful. MIT had me out for their Solve MIT is a conference that they're having right now. It's ongoing for the next couple of days, and I got to give it a good kickoff with their new president, who's a woman who
Hmm,
is speaking for the first time, and I got to go in and share my story. So it was wonderful to be there and
amazing.
inspire or hope to inspire the people at Solve. So it was wonderful to be there.
That's amazing. Your story is one of a kind. I just imagine it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Like all the time. It's like one day it's like your story is amazing and you're happy to inspire people. And the next day you're probably like, why in the world is my story like this? This isn't the life I had envisioned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm sure you've thought about this for a really long time. And I'm going to give you a proper introduction when I do this podcast so people will know who you are before we're getting to this point. But um, obviously, April, what day was it? The fifth? Was it the 15th? Is that what it
Yeah, April
was?
15th in 2013. So it was a little over 10 years ago now, which it feels sort of crazy to say that it was 10 years.
Right. Um, I'm just trying to think. So we all know that was the day of the Boston Marathon bombing. Wow. Right. It's one of those things where he's like, where was I when?
Yeah. Yeah,
Unfortunately, you were there.
I
Um,
was. I was right there. I was 2 feet. The the second bomb was placed 2 feet away from my 2 feet.
are you
And
serious? Two
and
feet?
I lost my left foot immediately on contact on that sidewalk. Um, it changed my life forever.
I mean, I can imagine this as much as you talked about this, it probably is it still kind of surreal 10 years later to actually have to say that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there, like you hinted at the beginning, there are some days where you go speak and you share your story, and it all seems, like a normal thing, and then the next day you think, "Holy cow! Like that, did that really happen to me? Like, how on earth did I survive that?" And it goes back and forth constantly, and I've stopped trying to fight that. I think it is actually unbelievable that someone could survive it, or even that it happened.
2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm not sure I realized that, as you can tell from my reaction. Um, this just honestly it just blows me away. There's like 10 different avenues I want to go with you right now. So you were just there as just a spectator, any normal day, right?
And I wasn't. So I was a professional ballroom dancer at the time, and that was my career out of high school. And I traveled and performed and competed and taught ballroom dance. And I took a day off and was walking around. I didn't know anything about running or the Boston Marathon. I'd lived in Boston for a number of years, but running and ballroom dancing don't go hand in hand. Sweating in public and dressing up and wearing high heels don't go hand in hand. So I was not spectating the marathon. I just thought, I'll just go and see what all that commotion is one street over. And I did. And I was probably there for about 4 or 5 minutes and everything changed.
You were there for that short of a time?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh
I was
my
not there for
God.
very long at all. Yeah.
At what point did you realize what happened? I mean, I imagine everyone was in shock for quite some time. At what point does it sink in? It was like, did that really just happen?
Yeah. Immediately. I mean, the pain kind of tells you. But
Really?
yeah, it was immediate. As soon as the first blast went off, I knew that it was not fanfare or a transformer or anything. So it was immediate.
And you said you were by the second blast?
Mhm.
What was happening in between? What was the time difference in between the first and second? Do you remember?
No,
Were
but I
people
think it
taking
was like
off?
10 seconds, maybe.
Oh, that's soon. Oh,
Well,
geez.
I don't know. Don't quote me on that. You'd have to
Yeah.
look it up.
Yeah. Okay. Relatively quickly after, though. Wow. I kind of don't. It's just one of those things where it's like, to me, it's almost like a movie, right? To many people, it's almost like, did that really happen to you? It's real life.
Mhm.
And like I said, I want to be really sensitive about that. Um, and you ended up losing a limb because of that.
I did.
Wow. You and obviously many others. And with it being the 10-year anniversary, as I just watched a few weeks ago, the Netflix documentary came out or whatever. Do you have any desire to like watch that? You're like, hell no, I am distancing
Absolutely
myself from
hell
that.
no.
Yeah.
I don't believe in Hollywood making money off of other people's tragedies, unless that money is going toward, causes that will help other people that didn't have the support like we did. And I don't believe in, I no, I haven't. I would never see it. I lived it. It would be
Yeah.
like someone saying, "Would you like to see a movie about your worst day or your worst breakup? Like, would you go watch it?" No, of course not. Right. So
Mm.
yeah, I definitely didn't watch it. Have no desire to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I can obviously completely understand that. And I've
Yeah.
thought that before, right? It's like not just this, but like any movies based on a true story with tragedies. And like, I know like people love watching like the serial killer stuff. It's like these were people, this was someone's family member and they
Yep.
have to watch this. And now the whole world is watching this. Like, I feel bad. Like,
Yep.
yeah, you're right. Unless like some of the donation goes towards the benefit of something, like that's terrible.
Yeah,
It's
it's really
absolutely
terrible.
terrible.
I am not, I know that there is a very large population of women and men, but women who watch the true crime stuff. I will never. And I
Yeah.
didn't before. I mean, I think I watched Law and Order with my mom growing up a little bit, or in late 20s a little bit, but other than like, I don't understand how people can sit around and watch that stuff. That's someone's family and someone's kid and someone's,
Yeah.
I would never understand it.
It really
And I never
is.
want to be comfortable. I never want to be comfortable with crime. I never want to be comfortable with listening to someone being hurt. I don't want to be comfortable with watching violence. I don't think that that's a normal, okay thing. And
Yeah.
maybe people will come after me for that. And I don't care. I really don't care. I think it's absolutely sickening that people can just listen to and binge true crime all the time. I think
Right.
it's absolutely gross.
And it's also like
It's like actually
glorified.
chickens watching themselves, like watching movies of themselves getting slaughtered.
Mhm.
Like that's all I think about when people talk about it. It makes my skin crawl.
And obviously Hollywood puts a spin on it to make it like glorified and
Yeah,
get people to watch.
absolutely. And I don't, you hear my dog laughing.
Actually, no, I don't. Was that Fred?
Yeah, that's Fred. You can
Hey,
hear him.
Fred.
Sorry for the audio. He's thirsty boy. Yeah, I think, it's, again, I don't think that it's a healthy thing to watch the true. I mean, certainly the bombing and, the 9/11 movies and all of that. I shouldn't comment on the 9/11 stuff. I didn't experience that firsthand, but I will say for the true crime stuff and all of that, I just think it's sickening that people can get comfortable watching that. And I do believe that it contributes to women being put down in society from people
Mm.
having watched all of that all the time and gotten comfortable with it. I really do.
Mm. Oh, well, we can spin to more positive stuff as there's a lot of ups and downs in your journey the last 10 years. I don't even want to say that's your lowest of low, but that's pretty low. And I do know there's a few other occasions to happen since then. And you've documented your journey. What made you want to document your journey?
It started with Anderson Cooper. So he came in and interviewed me, gosh, maybe 4 days after I was injured. It was very early on. And he came back the next day after that interview and said that it was his most watched interview to date. Obviously, that's been blown out of the water quite a few times since then. And he asked if I would do a film with him and document my first year as an amputee, and called it the Survivor Diaries. I don't think it had a name right away. And so I did. They gave me a new iPhone. I mean, this was 10 years ago. It didn't even have like the camera around. So I just had to like aim it at my face and not really know if it was recording. And I documented it, and he, came out all the time, and his camera people came out all the time. And it was just really important for me to document it, for the film, so that other people for years and years and years after me could see what that reality was really like.
Mhm.
But also it was important for me to do it for myself. And I'm so grateful I did, even if it didn't turn into a film. I'm so grateful I did, because it gives me, I'm very visual. It gives me a visual diary of all of these moments that happened that I would have never remembered otherwise. The deep and the feelings and the crying and the hearing fireworks again for the first time, and taking my first steps and navigating stairs. I mean, there's so much that didn't make the film, that hours and hours and hours and tens and hundreds of hours. And, all of those moments were just, wearing jeans again for the first time, wearing high heels, for the first time, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. And I'm really glad that I documented all of that. I'm really happy to have that diary.
So is that something you look back and reflect on?
Absolutely. All the time.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's motivating. I definitely get inspired by so many people around me, but I don't think there's anything wrong with being inspired by your own journey.
Hell no.
And it's wonderful to be able to see that and think, okay, if I survive that, I can get through today,
Yeah.
and if I can survive that, I can get through this next moment.
Well, it's also wonderful that you not only inspire yourself. I mean, I know by now, you're inspiring so many other people. And it's not just people that have had such incredible trauma or have lost a limb or a body part. It's just people just dealing with their own personal issues, right? And you see someone like you, like, seriously, if you can get through this and you can document this and show people you can do it, it's like I'm running out of excuses
Well,
not to do it.
it's interesting. I hear that a lot. And I think, I hear a lot like, oh, I can't complain because of X, and I can't complain because of X. I have a friend going through some really hard times right now, and he'll often say, well, other people have it worse. And I'll snap back and say, you don't get to say that. That doesn't mean that you don't get to complain and cry and think it's unfair and all of those things. I think often about a woman that approached me in a meet and greet after a speech early on. I think this was 2015. And she appeared very ill. She was very sick physically. And she had cancer. She had no hair, no eyebrows. And she looked at me and she said, and she was with her husband, and her husband was helping her walk and hold up. And she said, it's nothing like what you're going through. I mean, mine's so different. It's nothing like it's not as bad as what you're going through. I'm just hoping to make it to my son's 16th birthday. And I will never forget that woman. I can see her face. I can see her husband's face when she said it. I can hear her voice. And I never let anyone compare since that moment, because this woman is probably not alive anymore. And she still didn't allow herself to fully embrace the hard that she was facing, because she thought I had it worse. And that is so incredibly sad to me. And so I'll often say, when I go into Q&A after one of my talks, I'll often say, we do Q&A, but if you downgrade your problem, don't ask the question. Like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear, well, it's nothing like what you went through. Because think about it. If you had your first breakup at 30, like, that would break your heart. That would destroy you. If you had your first broken arm, or first time you ever got physically hurt at 45, like, that would be really hard. And I think we all need to do a better job of allowing ourselves to realize that, and to have a little bit more empathy for other people that may not have it as bad as we do, but still get to complain and suffer and cry and all of that. So I try and make space for it, because I so often hear like, well, you have it the worst. I'm like, I really don't. And also let's not judge
Yeah.
that or scale it. I guess you could judge, but like, let's not scale it.
That's a great point. I mean, it's one of those things where, like it or not, it probably just means a little more coming from you. I know I was watching interviews, I was doing research on you these last few days, and it's about like therapist and therapy. It's not your job to be someone's therapist, right? I
Yes,
mean,
right.
I completely
Absolutely.
understand that and I agree with that. It's one of those things where like it just means a little more coming from you though when you say something like that. So hopefully people are listening to this and they just feel a little more relieved hearing that come from you about like don't compare, your problems are still your problems
Yeah.
and that means
Don't
a
do
lot.
it. Don't do it. Especially don't do it to me because I won't let you. Like if someone
You're
starts,
tough. You are tough.
yeah, I am. I've been
I
through
love
some
it.
stuff. I just won't let them. I'm like, no, you've got to start that over again, and then I'll listen.
That's
But I'm
awesome.
not listening to you downgrading your stuff because everybody has it hard.
Okay, so I kind of want to look a little more into like mental health and where your
Mhm.
mindset has come from because what were you like as a person before this day? And then what has this day done to you and how has it changed your mindset?
That's a great question. I was just talking to my dear friend Lori yesterday about this over champagne, and we were celebrating because we, made it 10 years. We met as a result of this marathon bombing,
Mm,
um, and she didn't go through it directly, but she was in the city, and uh, we were talking about mindset and who you are before compared to who you are after, and just looking at the wide scope of different people who've gone through hard times. And speaking of therapy, which you brought up, and I talk about often, that I'm in therapy. I don't think anyone would believe that I would possibly be able to do this on my own.
mm,
Who was I like before? I'm a firm believer that when you go through something big, whether that's really, really good, you hit the lottery, or you find the love of your life, or you know, get your dream home, or something really bad, meaning you had this massive trauma or hard breakup or whatever, loss of a job or home or whatever it is, go through something really big that rattles you in whatever way it does. And I believe that who you were before is now in neon lights above your head.
mm.
And what I mean by that is the people that are always the victim. I recently dated one, uh, who are always the victim, who are, oh, of course I spilled coffee on myself. Of course that person didn't call me back. Of course I didn't get the job. Of course, this would happen to me. That is now a neon sign above that person's head. And if you are, oh crap, I spilled coffee, like, I guess I'll buy a scarf and wear it around my neck. So, you know what I mean? Like finding solutions, or, oh, he didn't call me back, like his loss, or not saying toxic positivity here. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, you know, a forward thinking mindset
Mhm.
of how do I fix this now? Like, yes, this is awful. Yes, I'm going to cry and stomp my feet and I'm going to feel it all. I'm not saying, just immediately move on. But if you have the mindset, which I think is my mindset of, okay, now what? Like now that I've cried for 5 days, now what am I going to do? So I think, when I've faced things that are really hard in the past, which I have faced really, really hard things in the past, um, and been through some real hard things long before this, I always tried to find a solution. My parents were really big on having my brothers. I have two older brothers; they're twins. My older brothers and I to find solutions and to fix it on our own. Our parents were not rescuers at all. We were all out of the house at 17,
Mm.
on our own, financially and house and everything. And we had to find solutions on our own. So I think that that's part of it. That's certainly hard. But you have to figure it out, and I think that really helped, finding those solutions and when you're faced with the hard stuff.
So you would say that this event kind of amplified who you were as a
I,
person, your
I think
mindset.
so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I share a lot on social media, and I share a lot, as we were talking about earlier, with people in the good and the bad. So I don't want anyone tuning in to think like, oh, she just has it easy because she just figures out solutions to everything. Like that is not the case at all.
Right.
I struggle a lot. But I also, I also have hard times, but I also try and figure it out. Um, Try and find a solution.
I would like to think I'm the same way, but it's one of those things where I don't want to go through something like this to figure that out
Yeah, no,
either,
I
you
don't
know?
recommend it.
What are your thoughts? I've been having conversations a little more about this recently, especially with myself and the people around me, is like negative self-talk. I think that kind of relates to what you just talked about, how it's like, I think it's important we just eliminate that from our vocabulary altogether. As far as like people make mistakes, you can't just, oh, you stupid, like, God, you know what I mean? Like talking to yourself like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, I just had a hard week of ruminating on one particular subject, and I was going through a hard thing, and I was just ruminating and ruminating and ruminating, and that's not like me. I definitely have negative self-talk, like anyone does. Everyone would, I think, would be lying if they said they never do.
Mhm.
But um, this was like new level for me. It was even shocking to me, and I booked an extra therapy appointment that week, and I was like, what is happening? Like, I know I'm right now wiring my brain to keep going more and more and more negative, and I know that I could spiral into now this is my normal. And I got, honestly, like a little, I've never talked about this, but I got a little scared. I mean, this was very recent. It's last week, in fact. And my therapist and I were just talking about, like, okay, well, what proves that? Like, who said that? Who said that you were XYZ? And I was like, well, no one. She's like, well, what facts do you have to back that up? It's like, well, no one. She's like, okay, well, then return to the moment and say, that's just that's just negative self-talk. That's just those are intrusive thoughts taking over. And to be honest, it was really scary and really hard. Um and I've come out the other end. But yeah, I think I hadn't had to deal with it to that level yet in my life. Given everything that I've been through, that says something. Uh, but it was like spiraling into that. And yeah, I think before that, I was just able to interrupt myself and be like, nope, don't have time for that. Like, let's not think the worst. And I think, it also depends on what the subject is.
Hmm.
I know I'm being vague about what mine was about, but regardless of what it was about, um, it's also a sign that whatever that was meant something to you. Like, whatever, let's say you didn't get a job, or you didn't get a promotion that you wanted, and you are just more down on yourself than usual. And that just means that you cared, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a piece recently on, for those that, I put it on my Instagram in case someone wants to find it, but it was for those that had a really bad Boston Marathon, because I've had a really bad race before. I didn't run it this year, but I wrote a piece for the people that were watching everyone else's great races and sitting at home crying, because I've been there before. And I said in that piece that your despair and disappointment is directly proportionate to the hope you had. The hurt you feel is in direct proportionate to the hope you had. And that's true, right? The loss is in direct proportion to what you hoped it would have been. And so it's a good sign that something that meant something to you, and to recognize that.
That's a great point. And what was funny you said that, because this morning I called my wife, she's traveling for work now, and I said, hey, listen, like, I'm excited about this interview, this conversation I'm going to have, slightly nervous. And I was just like, I have not been nervous for a conversation in a while. I was like, that means it means something to me.
Yeah,
So
right. That means something. And
yeah.
and especially like this conversation, and I love the conversation, so I'm so glad we're having it.
Mm.
But the conversation, and especially a Boston Marathon, people dream their whole life to be there, and they have that one shot, and sometimes you have a bad run on race day, and that's hard.
It's my wife's dream goal, is to run the Boston
Yeah.
Marathon.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, you have a lot riding on that, and you can have tummy troubles that morning, and you could prepare forever, and the
Yeah.
weather could be awful, or and that can happen in a lot of other things too. You could
Mm.
meet this incredible person and then have one bad date and it's all over, and that is heartbreaking.
Hmm.
And and so it can be, it's just directly, the hurt you have is direct proportionate to the hope you had.
That's excellent point. That's
Yeah.
an excellent point. I want to keep going along on your journey. I wish I had you for like 10 hours today, but
Same. I could talk forever.
oh, well, come on back anytime. But so you've run the marathon. Has it been multiple times, right?
I've run in 3 Boston marathons. I finished 2. I had a DNF. I did not finish, which
Okay.
was brutal, heartbreaking. It was in 2018. They closed Boston Logan. It was such torrential downpour, monsoon, frozen monsoon, and I succumbed to hypothermia. So many people did that year. There was no reason for me to be so hard on myself because it was not my fault. It was the weather, but my gosh, I had destroyed my negative. Speaking of negative self-talk, that was a bad one.
Okay, so I wanted to bring it to people's attention before we kind of rewind again a little bit that you've actually done this multiple times, which is amazing.
I was not a runner before, and I decided to become a runner.
When did that happen? When did you say, F this, I am running this freaking thing now? When did that happen?
I said it doped up on a ton of pain medication just 4 days after losing my leg.
Freaking awesome.
He's clapping his hands.
Yes.
I did. Also under the influence
Jesus
of Anderson
Christ.
Cooper's Blue Eyes. And I did it.
You
and
mean it? Did you mean it when you said it? Or like, that
meant
sounds nice. You meant it?
I meant that I wanted to run. I didn't know if I physically could, right?
Okay.
Like, yes, I absolutely meant it if I could physically do it, right?
Yeah,
Like I didn't even know how to pronounce the word prosthetic at that time, or prosthetist, which is the fancy name for the person that makes your legs. I did not know if I could, but I absolutely meant that I wanted to. And my dad was like in the background waving his arms, being like, "You forged notes in gym class to get out of running the mile." And I was like, "Sure did."
This is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is freaking awesome.
Yeah, I did it, and I've run it twice, finished it twice, run it 3 times, finished it twice. And it was both times were the best days of my life. This past, well, now it's 2 years ago, 2022, I ran it with Shalane Flanagan as my guide support runner. And it was so much fun. It was the best day of my life. I did not want it to end. I slowed down toward the end because I just wanted to make it last longer, which you shouldn't really do, especially when running next to an Olympian. But I didn't want it to end. It was just the most fun, most beautiful, most incredible day. There's nothing like the Boston Marathon. I hope your wife gets a chance to do it for sure.
I'm encouraging it. I know a conversation
absolutely.
we've had recently is like the possibility of starting a family soon. And so she's like, if that's my focus. And but I was like, hey, listen, like, just if that's your goal, let's just do whatever it takes to reach it. I don't want you looking back later in life saying, I wish I had, right?
Yep, absolutely. And it's such a fun thing, I think, for a couple to go through too, because you can support and, all the things. You can make all the pre-marathon meals. You can get Shalane's cookbook and make all the food. That's how I rocked it. It made a world of difference. It was just so much fun.
That's amazing. So when did you complete your first one? When was that?
2016 was my first one. It was my first, and I was undertrained, but I did it and I finished. And when I crossed the finish line, then President Barack Obama tweeted me and said, "Congratulations, Adrianne. We carry on. We finished the race. We don't let terror and bombs stop us." And I like popped a bottle of champagne and was like, "That's it. This is amazing." And then I said, "I'm never running again." And now here we are.
That is just absolutely incredible. So at what point from that day that this happened, did you get your prosthetic put on, and what was that like?
I was really fortunate this sounds sort of like a contradiction, but I was fortunate with my injuries that it was, the surgeon could be really clean with my stitches, and I didn't have skin issues, or, they could take the burns away. And I was healthy, and I recovered very quickly. I was in the best shape of my life. I was dancing like 12, 14 hours a day, every single day of my life. And I was just in peak shape. And so when you're in peak shape, your body just recovers faster than the average bear. And so I was able to get in. I mean, you usually wait, it's like average, again, it's different for everybody, but average, if you have trauma, it's usually 4 to 6 months before you can really walk in your leg. And I was in it in I think 12 weeks, and was up and walking. It was really, I was very quick. Wow. But then when you first get in it, you're in it for 5 minutes the first day. and then 10 minutes the next day, and then nothing the next day. And then, cause you're putting all of your body weight down on muscles and nerves and bones and all of these things, tendons and everything that are just really freaking pissed at you. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
all been sewn back together and cut, I mean, I could get gruesome, but like, they're just really mad. And so to put all your body weight on that feels really strange. Like, it's just a whole new body. It's just such a weird sensation to like, you put weight on a part of your body you never have. It's just bonker. It's just
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At what point in this process were you given kind of the thumbs up that, hey, the Boston Marathon is a thing I could possibly run?
Within the first year, I was dancing again and
Wow. Awesome.
performed. Yeah. So I lost my leg in April, and I performed my first performance in January, back like in a ball gown and all of that. And when I got back to Boston, I did that at a TED Talk in Vancouver, and which was a real pinch me moment. And then I was came back to Boston, and I came back to Boston, everyone was like, oh, you did the dancing, let's run the marathon. And I was like, do you know that that's 26.2 miles? That's so long, that's so hard, and you only get a statement necklace and a free banana. Like, that's ridiculous. And like, why would anyone do that and sweat in public? Like, never ever. I'm a dancer. And then I thought, I made a promise to Boston, and I'm going to try it. And I tried running, and it was super hard. And I thought, there's a terrorist out there that will know that I gave up if I give up. So I decided to not give up and keep giving it a good college try. And so I did it. I mean, that sounds so matter of fact. It was not that easy, but I did it. It's still a pinch me moment for sure.
Awesome.
There's
Awesome.
nothing like the Boston Marathon. I mean, I like almost choke up every time I think about it. It's just what is wonderful about marathoning, and I heard this for the first time from Shalane's mom when I had a chance to interview her early on. And she said, there's something really wonderful about a marathon, because when you accomplish something that you think is pretty much impossible, it leads you to have confidence to do 100 other things in your life that you never thought you would do.
Yeah.
And no one can ever take that away from you. Like, someone could take a career away, someone could take your home away, someone could take, your best friend away. Like, no one can ever take that marathon away from you. You did it. No one else can. I ran next to Shalane. She gets a ton of credit for being my coach and my mentor and my sister in sport, and always will be. But I still had to put one foot in front of the other, like no one else can do that for you. And it's just the best feeling in the world. Truly.
Not only that, I mean, so yeah, you ran that race for however 3-4 hours, however long it took. It was the fact that you also showed up for yourself every day to train that whole time too. And showing up for yourself, like you said, that kind of translates to everything else later in life. Like when you make promises to yourself and you show up, that means so much for so many different categories in life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Shalane said over and over and over again, everyone talks about the finish line. Everyone talks about the finish line. Everyone talks about the finish line, but it's the start line that's the most important. Getting to the start line healthy, and then just celebrate. Like you did the training. Now let's just celebrate. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So when you show up and you're just happy to be there, magic can happen. And that happens with a lot of things. You show up to a relationship and you're just really happy to be there, magic can happen.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Mindset. Yeah. Positive
absolutely.
mindset. And one word that I wrote down right here, I'm taking notes as you talk, is accountable.
Yeah.
I feel like you documenting this live, and perhaps just you having conversations with yourself, you've been holding yourself accountable to the promises that you've made to yourself and perhaps to the other people. You put it on film. It's like, it is out there now. I better do it. Was that kind of part of your plan too?
Yeah. I think at first I didn't really think that would have the impact it did, for myself at least, and certainly not for anyone else. And I didn't think about other people watching when I was recording all that stuff. Thank goodness. Otherwise I wouldn't have recorded 90% of it. But I definitely realized that quickly, looking back on some of those videos, like how impactful that was for myself. Yeah. That I was holding myself accountable for certain things. that I was learning how to walk, and I could watch myself walking, and, you know, just like a toddler, like you're a mid-30s woman walking around the cobblestone Boston, and you look normal because you have jeans on, no one can see your leg, but you literally have your arms outstretched like a toddler learning how to walk. You look drunk at like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, like just learning how to walk again. I got kicked out of 3 bars because people thought I was drunk when
Oh
I was
my God.
100% sober, just because I couldn't walk, like normal, air quote normal. Yeah, it was, I mean, yeah, you hold yourself accountable, and I can see, you know, the first time I was running in a prosthetic and how wonky I looked, and then, you know, you can see yourself in slow motion just going smooth, as Shalane would say, smooth like butter. It's wonderful to be able to see that progress, for sure.
Mm, mm. And I know we haven't also touched on something else that's happened a few years back, another tragic event, which I want to touch on in a moment, because another pitfall, and another thing you've climbed up out of the ashes. It's just great. You are crazy.
Yeah, I
Public
didn't see that
speaking.
coming.
So you're a speaker now.
I
Were
am.
you even speaking before this? Because there's a lot of people that can't just get on stage and speak in front of the thousands of people, and you're doing it constantly now. You were almost kind of like, I don't want to say thrown into this. This is your choice to do this, but like, where did that come from? How comfortable did you get with that immediately?
You know, I was asked to give my first talk just, I think, like a month after I started walking again. Someone had seen my interviews and said, I think that message is really powerful. Can we turn it into a talk, and can you come speak? And the first speech was at John Hancock, which was at the time was the presenting sponsor of the Boston Marathon. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And I was nervous for sure, but I think getting up in front of people is something that comes naturally to me, being a dancer. So
That's
like
great.
that part of it was okay, but I was very nervous. I'm sure I was terrible the first time I did it, but from that talk, I got 2 more from people that were in the audience, and I got 3 more from the next one, and then 2 more from the, you know, and now I average 5 or 6 from each talk for another one. Sometimes I'll get something like 50 talks out of one, depending if it's for like a networking event. And it just seems wild. I'm booked through 2028 right now.
So thank you for joining me
Yeah,
today.
no, it's not every day. It's not every day.
Holy cow.
But yesterday at MIT, and then I had a thing in the morning with Mexico. But I feel really grateful that I can travel to places like Kenya and Ecuador and Nepal and Iceland and Ireland and Copenhagen, and, you know, all these places all over Europe, and travel and share my story in hopes that it is a peg in someone else's ladder to where they want to go. And these big companies, and could do commencement speeches, which is nuts to me because I didn't go to college. So
Hey kids, you don't
I made it, Dad. Yeah.
Have you taken? I was gonna say, have you taken classes or courses on public speaking, or have you just gotten better and better?
No, I haven't. I made quite a few friends that do public speaking, and you kind of bounce ideas off of each other, but the business side of it is tough to learn as you go. And being a woman-owned business, especially minority women-owned business, being someone with a disability, you know, there are a lot of bumps and such that you figure out along the way. But yeah, I think, you know, it's about reading the audience and figuring out what the client needs. I'll speak very differently for a hospital in Nepal after they had the quakes and they have a lot of amputees than I would for a mom and pop prosthetic company, than I would for one of my Google speeches, than I would for you know, MIT, or it's very different for each one. So I write each speech for each client. And yeah, and then I deliver.
Amazing.
I love doing it.
I'm having like a hard time phrasing this question if I even want to touch it, but it's kind of like, as much as I'm sure you did not want this to happen, like, does part of you feel like I'm the person that this would happen to, that I can like spin this into like a million different positives for so many other people? Like, I would imagine this has probably happened to people at the Boston Marathon, that their life just spun out of control and it's just dark and depressive. And I can't blame them. but
Right.
right. But it's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
like you said, you've amplified this and just there has to be part of you that says, I am built for this and I am here to show everybody that. I mean, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I think to a degree, I certainly want to help other people through the hard times. But that stems from my why behind that, and my why behind being in the public eye, and my why behind giving speeches. It all stems and goes back to my core belief. I believe this in my knowing, what I call my knowing, which is my, believe in my bones, that there's nothing worse in life than suffering alone.
Mm.
And while certainly the bombing happened to so many of us, and we were all on the hospital floors together, and we certainly saw each other and knew each other. We didn't see each other, but because we were all tubed up to our own beds, it certainly felt alone. And even though there was the outpouring of support, absolutely. And I had my family and my friends and my loved ones there, and I was getting hugs and kisses and being held, it still feels alone. And when I started to, move about in the real world again and get used to stranger danger and being on sidewalks, and I started to hear people talking about, oh, I'm suffering alone, or, oh, I'm going through this alone, or, oh, I'm going through this alone. And I just started thinking, like, there's nothing worse than that.
Mm.
There's nothing worse than that. So if I can be a resource for somebody else's darkness, whatever that darkness is, whether that's a breakup or trauma or hardship, then I feel like I'm doing something that's okay.
God, you're a warrior. It's incredible. And I'm, as you said, you travel the world. You go to Kenya, you said Iceland, Nepal, right? When you say, hey, I'm Adrian from like the Boston Marathon, like, are they familiar with what that event is over on the other side of the world? Do they even recall that?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was in Kenya, because I show up, like, they've invited me, right? So like people know who I'm
Yeah.
going, they know who I am because they've invited me, and they've done pass out the little brochures or whatever they're doing. But yeah, people will ask questions, but people know, I mean, for sure, people knew what had happened, and they'd seen it. I think now as we get further and further away with the tenure, I think in the States, like, people aren't really talking about it as this big terrorist attack. Like, you'll hear, we haven't had a terrorist attack since 9/11, like, on the news, like someone would say that. And I get, my blood boils. And so, yeah, that part feels hard, that people don't recognize it as the day. I knew that was going to happen. The neighbor's got a new dog. So,
oh, we got friends.
There it is. Fred.
He's good. Fred is all good. I love Fred.
He's protecting me from the big scary dog, right? That could possibly open the front door. Not at all. So yeah, I think it's hard that, when there's something that's happened to you, and you feel alone in that. I think that can feel really hard.
I want
to be clear in saying that it's not because I felt like I didn't have support. I had a ton of support, but that you can still feel alone in the specificity of what that is.
I want to move like kind of away from the whole Boston Marathon tragedy or whatever, but I did see or hear that you went to the trial. How was that for you? Was that experience like anxiety ridden, or was it like, I'm happy this is the close of a chapter? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was really tough. As you would imagine, I'm really, really fortunate that my experience, my entire experience, myself, I was held so tightly and so cushioned and supported and loved by the FBI and prosecution that were working on the case, and the investigators. When we were, I guess a lot of people wouldn't know this because you don't participate in a federal trial. Hopefully you aren't a witness in a federal trial in terrorism. But you go ahead of time and you tell your story, and they're shaping their case to nail this guy. and you tell your story to them in a room with FBI agents, you know, there who are trying to make sure that you're not lying and comparing it to all the, or not even just not lying, but like obviously trauma memory is different than real memory,
Yeah.
as I learned. And so they're comparing it to the footage they have and everything. And then they decide whether you're going to testify or not. And they invite you to testify. And you can say yes or no. I said yes. I wanted to testify. So I wasn't forced into it. Some people think that we were all forced into it. That was not the case. And as you prepare for that, they were going to show, they needed to show in order to prove the case. And they have to, just for legal terms, they have to prove that you're actually on the sidewalk. Like they have to prove that you were there, even though you know you were there, even though all of that, that's just part of the case. That's how the law works. And so in order to do that, they had to play footage of me being on the sidewalk, and I needed to be in the courtroom when that played. So that meant, what this is all to say, that meant that I needed to watch that footage.
Oh my God.
And so preparing for that, I went in and they said, we're going to do it frame by frame. And you can say whether you want another frame. We can do this one frame a day. We can do it one frame a week. We can do it one frame a month, and we're going to get through this. And then we'll eventually play it like a video. And they just did it there's no right way to show someone how you're getting obliterated on a sidewalk, but they did it the right way. And every time that they needed to show it to me, they told me ahead of time. I booked a therapy session directly after. If my therapist was out of town, the entire FBI and prosecution guys and I all went out for beers. That happened a lot. And they're still some of my brothers to this day. You know, they're some of the greatest guys I know. We're on a text thread together still, and they support me and love me and have shown up for me in many ways in my life. And so it was impossibly hard, but it was also, by the time I hit the courtroom, the only unknown was, what would I feel like when I faced the monster, right?
Yeah.
And even that, they prepared me as best they could by saying, look, no one's forcing you to do this, but it might help maybe for you to go in and see him and watch someone else testify. So then you at least can be in the room with him for the first time and not have to say anything. And I did that a couple times. And then by the time that I testified, I was as prepared as I could be. And I still sobbed up on the stand. The monster was like 4 feet away from me, and he wasn't cuffed or shackled, and he was in normal clothes, and it was super hard.
Did you have to restrain yourself at all? I imagine I would have to.
I did. I don't know if you saw the reports, but I walked in, I sat down, I stood up, raised my right hand and said my oath, and then gave my testimony, and answered, the questions. And it was interesting because, I haven't talked about this, but, they told me, like, if someone's going to get cross-examined, if there's a witness that's going to get cross-examined, it's going to be you. And they kept telling me that. And I said, why is that? And they said that they think that you're monetizing this, the defense, which is bullshit, excuse me. And they think that, I'll say that again, which is crap.
No, I don't care. I'm ready to start cursing for you here. I
And
almost feel like, fuck off.
Yeah,
like I deserve this.
Yeah. And I was prepared. I mean, I knew what I would say if they said that. And they did, because I cried so hard, they ended up not crossing me. And, if they had said that, I would have said, I have zero apologies for how your witness forced me to survive. But I never got to say that. I had a whole thing planned, but I didn't get to say it.
Was he receptive, or was he just like, not whatever, I don't give a shit? Like, what was, from what you could see?
There's some sort of culture thing where it's polite to not make eye contact. So he was looking down the whole time, but I don't think that's, I don't know. I have no idea. But I stood up after I was done, and they said, you're free to go. And I kind of sat there for a minute, and then the judge was like, take your time, but you're free to go. Meaning, like, we got to carry on with this. And I was frozen, and I stood up, and it was unreal because I was preparing for that moment for so long. And then it was just done. And I was sort of in this zone, and I stood up, and walked down, took a step down, and I was like, my legs felt so shaky. I mean, I was just beside myself with rage and hurt. And I paused, and I was standing directly over him. And I just stood over him and just stood there for, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. And the whole courtroom fell silent. And then I walked out, and the reports were like, Adrianne hovered dangerously close to monster. And like Adrianne was in striking distance and didn't take the blow. And I was like, I could have done it, but I don't want to spend my life in jail.
I
So
mean, clearly you took the high road, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, the New York Times reported that they had to restrain me, and that was not true. So I called them and told them to retract that.
if you choked the life out of him, I'm sure we'd all give you a round of applause too.
I wasn't restrained. The cop that was standing right next to him did not hold me back. He actually took a step backwards.
You know, they all want to do it.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. It was very clear. He was like, I'm not going to get in your way. He like took a step back. Yeah.
I won't touch on that anymore, but that's, man, I'm feeling something here just listening to you talk about that.
Yeah, I was, yep.
Wow. And not to, I don't know. Like, I know at some point I got to bring up what happened a few years back with the whole car thing. We haven't touched on that yet. It's like, what the frick? So you do this trial, right? And then you end up doing like the marathon yourself. And I imagine you're feeling like you're bouncing back pretty well. Like, hey, I'm getting a grasp of things, right? Like I'm making my new routine. I'm feeling better about myself.
I was speaking full time. I had run the 2016 marathon, took 2017 off, then ran 2018, did not finish, felt pretty down on myself for that, but decided I'd run 2019. And I was training hard and felt really good. And it was 100 days out, and I went exactly 100 days out. It's so poetic. And I was on my way to dinner, and I was crossing a street that's right on the marathon route, right somewhat near the finish line, like maybe like 3-4 blocks away. And I was walking through a crosswalk. I had the right of way. I had a walk signal. I don't jaywalk very often because I'm not fast on my prosthetic. Mm-hmm. And a car with no headlights on came out of nowhere and hit me going about 40 miles an hour and flew me. What is it called? The carbon fiber of that car bumper hit the carbon fiber of my prosthetic, and I bounced and I flew. They bounced off of each other, and I flew about 4 car lengths down on the cement and crushed my left side of my body. And those same firemen that peeled me off that were right there in the firehouse, peeled me off the pavement again and saved my life. And I almost lost my arm.
What the?
And that recovery was actually longer than the recovery of my leg, because I couldn't put my leg on. I couldn't use my arm. I was really destroyed. So I stayed at the hospital for a long time because I couldn't put my leg on. And I was really single and lived alone. So like I didn't have someone that would be like, oh, well, I'll just do that for her. I mean, I have a wonderful service dog, Fred Astaire, named after the ballroom dancer, but like he isn't trained to do that. You know, he didn't need to do that. So it was really hard, to say the least. And just to be re-traumatized again and on that sidewalk and was devastating. But I ended up back in the arms of my Superman surgeon and the good people at Boston Medical Center, and then rehabbed at the same rehab hospital and was able to get back on my feet somehow again.
What? Yeah,
and right when I got back on my feet, COVID hit. Yeah.
All you can do is like chuckle for a second, because it's like, hold on a second. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I have to imagine immediately after this happened, you have to be like, are you freaking kidding me?
You know, I was yelling while I was on the I didn't land on the crosswalk, but when that happened, and the firemen were trying to figure out like how to get the board under my body, because I was just a mess. And I was like, why does this keep happening to me? Why does this keep happening? I was just screaming it over and over again. And they were just like, we're so sorry. We're going to, you're going to get through this. And I was like, they're like, you're the strongest. You're going to recover. And I was like, I'm so sick of being strong. I'm so sick of having to recover from things. Yeah.
So you just said, I'm so sick of being strong. I'm actually, now that you said that, I want to hit on that for a moment, because it's reminding me of a speech. I don't know if you remember who Stuart Scott was, or ESPN, who passed from cancer maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago now. And he gave a speech at the ESPYs before he passed. And he said, like, when you just feel like you can't fight anymore, let someone else like fight for you, let someone else do the fight with you. Like when you are so sick of being strong, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the way, whether it's just an actual physical injury, or perhaps like a single mom of like four and who has to work 3 jobs just to make ends meet or whatever. Like, what do you do? Like, where's your inspiration come from? What have you learned from that situation? How do you keep pushing forward?
Yeah, I think, I'm really fortunate that I have such a good circle of friends and family that love me deeply and are there to be strong for me and with me and beside me. And, I feel so fortunate with that. And I gained so much inspiration from my mentees. I mentor young girls and some boys at the local hospitals here and across the country, some of them by Zoom. And I gained so much inspiration from them and what they're able to accomplish. And look at that. And I agree. I mean, you have to lean on other people. There's no way that I could do this on my own.
Mm,
Um, and also therapy. My therapist is a major part of my life. I recently, just this past year, switched therapists after 9 years. I've been in 10 years now, but after 9 years, I switched because he retired. It's clearly paying him too much. And how dare he? But I'm glad that I was able to get a new, fresh perspective. I'm a woman now, and it's shifting my mindset to see things that I've been working on in it through different eyes. And um, I think it's important to lean on people. I always say with therapy, I was talking to a friend of mine who's going through some hard stuff and contemplating therapy, that it's really nice to be able to have somewhere to put it, whatever that
mm,
it is, whether that's the
mm.
anger or the hurt or the uncertainty or the anxiety of life. Um, it's nice to be like, okay, I have somewhere for that, you know, like I have somewhere where I can put that hard thing. I can take it with me to the doctor and I can say, here's this, like, you wouldn't believe this, or, you know, yeah,
I
that
just,
feels really nice to be able to have somewhere to put it.
as you're talking, I just want to say thank you for being like so kind and generous, like talking to me. Like a lot of this stuff, like I'm hesitant to ask some of these questions because, like I said, I don't want to dig up any kind of wounds here,
Yeah.
and I
I would not
appreciate
answer if I felt like it was
I appreciate this, like, more than you even know. This
very
is
much. I
incredible.
appreciate the conversation as well. It's nice to
Um,
talk, and you're a great interviewer, so it's
thank
easy.
you. Thank you. I appreciate coming from you. I appreciate that. So like how much did having gone through this with the whole bombing situation, I guess you can say perhaps aid or assist you in this whole car thing? Was it more of a frustration? I gotta do this shit again, or was it like, all right, I know what I gotta do now? Like, what was your mindset?
Yeah, I thought, okay, now, well, I thought, A, I don't want to go through this again, but B, I thought I know how to do this, and I know that I have a therapist, and I know I have people, and I know how to navigate.
Mm,
I know how to navigate this now. It's going to be different, right? But I still know how to do it. And that, I mean, it greatly impacted it. Absolutely. I knew what it was going to be like. And it was so interesting because I told myself that if I, like, a couple years after the bombing happened, I remember talking to, I think it was my brother or my dad. And I was like, I don't think I'll ever be in that situation again. I hope not, knock on wood. But if I ever were, I want to learn a language, or like to knit, or I want to be really good at crosswords, or I want to work on something. Like I just sat in that hospital bed for, so long, and I didn't do anything. And they were like, whatever, Adrianne, you did a lot. And sure enough, I am back in a hospital bed with nothing but time on my hands. And you don't do anything. You don't do anything. Like, you're not going to have the bandwidth to do anything. You're just what my therapist would call a broken record. Like, oh my God, I was in a car accident. Oh my God, I was in a car. I was hit by a car. I was hit by a car. I was hit by a car. Oh my God, I was blown up by a terrorist. And it's just a broken record. You don't have the bandwidth for anything else. You aren't going to learn how to knit. You aren't going to like take up a language, or
mm,
you just aren't. I have a friend right now who took up a language while he's battling something, and I'm just blown away by it, but that's an anomaly. Um, and, and my first therapist told me when I told him that I was surprised that I just sat around again. He looked at me and he goes, Adrianne, you can't build in an earthquake. And I was like, you're so right. You cannot build in an earthquake. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, right outside of Seattle. And we had, in fact, I have a chapter, I'm writing a book right now, and I have a chapter in my book called Earthquake Drills based on this exact theory. And we had earthquake drills. Now kids have much scarier drills in school, but back then we had earthquake drills, and you would, for at least once, maybe twice a week, for 20 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes, you would sit on, which is a long time for a kid.
Yeah.
You would duck under your desk and you would hold on to the legs of the desk. And
where did you grow up?
In Issaquah, right outside of Seattle.
Okay, there you go, West Coast.
Yep. Yeah, West Coast. So we had a lot of earthquake drills for good reason. And we, you would just hold on to the desk legs, and you just had to wait it out. And that was it. And then the teacher would yell aftershock, and then you'd go underneath, and you just had to wait it out. You couldn't talk to your friends. You couldn't go do the things you wanted to do. You couldn't color. You couldn't, learn a lesson or anything. Couldn't go to recess. And so when my therapist said, Adrianne, you can't build in an earthquake. And I was like, you just have to wait for it to pass.
Wow.
And then when the aftershocks hit, which is PTSD, you have to go, okay, this is an aftershock. I can't do anything else. I just have to wait for it to pass. And that has been so powerful for me to think about and to realize that, the 10-year anniversary, that is a giant aftershock. There are a lot of people around who come back for that anniversary, and they want to talk about it with you, and they want to say the things and do the things and relive the moments. And that, that's an aftershock. You have to be ready for that. And so, Fred, sorry about that.
Oh, he's fine.
So yeah, it is such a powerful way to think about trauma or hard times. You can't do anything. You just have to sit under your desk and wait.
I want to ask a question about that in a moment, but you just brought up like this into your thing again. Is when you think of 10 years, is it more of a son of a bee, I gotta live this again? Or is it more of a look what I've done in the last 10 years? I can't freaking believe it. Like what side?
Both. Like at the exact same time, which makes it super confusing. It's like when you're having every emotion all at once, that's what it feels like. It feels completely out of control, and beautiful that I've been able to do what I've been able to do, and amazing that I've been able to travel and impact people, and hopefully leave a bit of a mark, small mark on the world. But also, I can't believe I have to do this. I can't believe it's already been 10 years. I can't believe I have to relive this. My body remembers that it's this time, holds that memory. And so everything feels harder and tighter. And I have to get like 4 massages, which sounds luxurious, but I'm so tight, it's not, in that 1 week. And, it's just, it's all of the emotions. It's everything all at once. Yeah.
How often?
Without sleep.
I'm guessing you need recharge days, right? Like how often would you say you need to recharge yourself?
In April, it's a great question. In April, I have learned that I do not work in April. And that is, again, that sounds luxurious. It is not. It does not feel relaxing. It does not feel like time off. It feels like tension nonstop. And the reason I take it off is because the Adrianne that would want to show up to a talk is not the Adrianne who would actually show up for a talk. And during my talks, I absolutely talk about the hard times, and I talk about the sidewalk, and I talk about all of those in the car, and the trial and all those things. But I can do that the other 11 months of the year. I've learned that I can't do that and be my best self and be healthy mentally or even physically in April. So I take that time off. I still do emails. I'll still do Zoom calls, to pitch to clients and to, book things and such, but I won't do a speech, and I try not to do any more than 2 interviews. Even though the news won't tell you that, because they pretend that I talk to them, but they're just pulling things off my social media and saying, Adrianne just said, and I'm like, I've done 2 interviews, but like the Google alerts was like 250 in the month of April or something insane.
Wow.
Yeah. It was
very, very self-aware. I don't know if you were that self-aware before, but clearly you're very self-aware of who you are right now.
Yeah, I was not.
You're kind of forced to be, right? You have to be.
Result. I mean, that's a result of what happened. You laying in that hospital bed with that broken record, you are forced to get to know a new body and a new heart and a new mind and new friends and a new career and new relationships. Everything changed.
I want to
Everything.
ask you, I want to ask you something real quick too about like how you said like you can't build in an earthquake and you wanted to learn like crocheting or crosswords or whatever, right? Like when we go through traumatic events as a person, not necessarily to this level, but just a traumatic event, I think a lot of the advice that we hear is like be distracted, go distract yourself, go learn something, go do something. Like, do you believe in that, or is it do you have to like sit with it and kind of get through it?
I'm a sit with it person.
Yeah.
I understand that some people want to go and distract themselves. I've certainly dated the guy that wanted to distract himself with fitness instead of face anything. I don't think that's
Yeah.
healthy. Um, and uh, I, you know, I'm a sit with it person. I meditate for 30, 40 minutes every single day without fail at the beginning of the day. And that made a world of difference for me to just sit with it and ground myself in my own thoughts in that present moment, not
Mm.
what already happened to me in my life or what might happen to me in my life or what I need to do that day just to be still, sip my coffee, be still. And so I'm a sit with me person. I do think it's important. I mean, look, I don't think it's good to sit with it for, 12 hours in a day and do that. You do need to get up and moving and go for a walk and,
Yeah.
get yourself. That's going back to that rumination that we were talking about earlier, right? I let myself do that and that was not healthy. Do not recommend ruminating and sitting in it for that long. But yeah, I need to sit with it and figure it out for myself um, before I can get moving and all of that. That
Yeah.
to me.
I probably personally need to get a little better at doing that. I think sometimes I get hit with some moments or some situations that are a little tougher to deal with, and I try to spit it into I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna react to by doing this or doing that or going somewhere or whatever. And
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
curious
that
about that.
it is hard because then you distract and then you go, oh, gosh, something feels off, or I feel really tired, and you've already bottled it, so it's now disguised as something else, right?
It's gonna come back and bite you some way, right?
Always, always, yeah.
Wow. I want to be cautious of time here, but I do know from the research I've been doing on you, we have some things coming out in the future, not just
Yes.
talks. We have a movie. Is it still being made, or what's going on with the movie?
It is still being made. I am making a film right now with IMAX, which is a massive pinch me moment. I'm so grateful that I can finally talk about it. That's exciting because there were years that I couldn't. We're still making it, and it's being edited and compiled now. I have, I think, 2 more days of filming. And it's the main character is not me. That's to be clear. The main character is New England. And my story is weaved from start to finish throughout that about this little girl that wants to become a ballroom dancer and moves to Boston and becomes a runner after tragedy, and dances again, and mixed in with a bunch of other things, including Mr. Fred Astaire, my dog, and training and all sorts of things, and doing my part to try and inspire people and fight for, inclusion in sport. And so that is coming out, I believe, November 2023. So this year.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
every year I get the Christmas card from the crew, and it's like soon, soon. And this past Christmas, it was like, it's coming this year. And I was like, yay, it's
That's
finally
really
happening.
exciting.
So it's very exciting. And I feel incredibly grateful to be a part of it. Um, and that Fred will be, like 4 feet tall in that theater. So that's very exciting.
We'll come back on after we can discuss it because I'm
Yes,
definitely watching
absolutely. I
it.
would love that.
That's
Yes.
crazy. Okay, you also have a book, but I want to ask you, you've mentioned Fred a few times. I am a big dog person, love dogs. What is Fred's, I guess, say role, right? He's a support dog, right? So for the
Service dog. Yep.
people, service dog. So for people that don't really understand the purpose of a service dog, or they just see him in the streets and don't understand it, what has Fred done for you?
Oh gosh, when I applied for a service dog, they said, "What are you looking for? Are you looking for a dog that will scare people off?" Meaning, like, if you want to be, you don't want people to approach you. If even meeting people or seeing people is like a trigger,
Mhm.
then maybe that you would get like a big scary looking German Shepherd or whatever. And I said, I would like a dog that would make it all better. And they looked at me and said, Adrianne, there is no dog that will do that. And then I found Fred, and he does.
He's-
So, or they found Fred for me, and I was like, perfect. He's made it all better. And obviously it's not all better, but it certainly is a lot better. So a
yeah.
service dog is very different for different people. So as we all know, sometimes a service dog can be a sighted guide for someone that has no vision or hard of vision. And Fred's main role every day is to help me in and out of the shower. So you don't wear your prosthetic leg in the shower because, of course, why would
Okay.
they make it waterproof? That would be way too productive. So they
How about you do it then? Frick it.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
in my spare time. Um, so they it's not waterproof, so I can slip really easily. And I'm a below knee amputee, meaning it's like mid calf is where my leg stops.
Okay.
And a lot of people who are below knee amputee who would be in and out of the shower, they can fall and become an above knee because those bones are so short anyway. And if you break them, you get the idea. So he helps me in and out of the shower. That's like his big everyday task, like a task. In the winters, he helps counterbalance when there's ice and snow when I'm walking, because I can't feel whether it's a crunch or a soft snow underneath that foot. And in New England, that's very important.
Oh yeah.
To not fall and have, crack your head open, amongst other things. And PTSD. So when there's a loud noise or fireworks or backfiring of a car, he will immediately lock eyes with me, and he knows just by my facial expression whether I'm okay or if I'm absolutely not okay. And if he sees that I'm not okay, he'll jump on me and give me, like, he literally wraps his arms around my neck and gives me like the greatest, biggest hug. And during turbulence on a plane and takeoff and landing, he gives me that same hug, which is pretty rock star.
That's amazing. I could definitely use the turbulence. I know it's a turbulence for.
Absolutely. I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's feeling out of control, right? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You travel a lot. You've probably had some turbulence.
Oh, yep. I have had some. Fred and I were on the one flight that was the hardest. Fred and I were on our way to New York, and I could not possibly have taken the next plane the next day. I needed to be there at 7 a.m. And so we had to go out that night, and it was the worst weather I've ever flown in. And the pilot was like, guys, this is not going to be a good flight, which you're already feeling, and
don't you just kind of say, well, then just go tomorrow?
I would have. I was speaking the next morning at 7 a.m. and I took the last flight out at 11 something. There was no way I could have done. And I looked at buses. I looked at, I thought about Ubering it. I should have. And it was the worst flight of our lives. And Fred was beside himself the entire time. And we got off the plane and into the tarmac, and he collapsed. He like passed out. And I thought he was having a heart attack or something, and he was just asleep. Like, he literally had exhausted himself in a 40-minute flight. And he passed out. He was so exhausted from working. I had to carry him all the way through the airport.
That's like the cutest thing of all time. He was so tired to help protect you and make you feel better that he got tired.
Yeah. He just, it's like a little kid just exhausting themselves.
Dogs are the freaking best.
Yeah. The absolute best. Awesome. Poor kid. He was so spent.
Before I let you roll here, I also want you coming out with a book, right? So talk about the book as well. When's that coming out?
I'm not done with it yet. So I'm currently shopping for a literary agent because I'm very fortunate to have a couple of publishing houses that are interested. So
who wouldn't it be? This is incredible.
Thank you. So I'm currently shopping for that, but I'm working on it. So I don't have a date yet, but soon, I hope.
How's that process been?
Everyone wrote books during COVID, but you can't build them quick. So I did not do that.
That's a good point. How's that process been for you? Has it been difficult, therapeutic? What's it been like?
It's been incredibly therapeutic. It's been really wonderful. When I can do it, I write speeches all the time. So it's hard for me to also find the time to be able to write the book. And part of that is just discipline. But it's been really therapeutic, to revisit some of these things. Certainly what we were talking about earlier with the videos and documenting everything, it helps because I'm like, how did that go again? Or what date was that? Or when was that? Or where was I when that happened? And so that's been, really, really interesting and really therapeutic. But I can't wait for it to be done. And then hopefully be able to go on a book tour so I can go, sign copies and give little love notes to everyone who's supported me.
Well, I'm in the Raleigh area, so if you're ever down here, absolutely. I'm coming to meet you.
I'll make sure it's one of the stops.
I just thought, I'm thinking out loud here, is like, this is going to be a game changer for so many people reading this book or listening to this book. I will say, not that you're anything like him, but like David Goggins is someone who I inspire. I love his stuff. I love his motive. He's very hard and very tough, as you probably know if you know who he is.
Yeah.
Listening to his book and all the hardships he came through and how he's overcome and just kind of pushed through and pushed through. And I'm just thinking of you and all the hardships you've overcome and how you're pushing through and how you're an inspiration to so many people. This is a game changer. This book is going to change so many lives. It's incredible.
That's so incredibly humbling to hear, Ryan. Thank you very much. I hope that it will. I hope that, again, it can be a peg in someone else's ladder when they don't feel alone and they're hurt.
Yeah.
I think it's all about.
I like I said, it's one of those things where you kind of wish it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it did. And you have just somehow made the absolute best of the worst situation, and not just for yourself, but for so many different people around the world. And that's why I'm like super excited that we got to do this today. Like I said, I started this by saying I'm incredibly honored. I'm going to end this by saying I'm incredibly honored. This story is incredible. You're very vulnerable, very honest. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. I'm glad we connected. I'm going to be following you very closely from here on out. We got movies coming up. We got books coming out, book tours. And
the movies did come before the book, which is sort of weird, but the more in-depth movie I hope will come later based on some of the stuff I reveal in the book. So we'll see.
Good for you. Freaking good for you, Adrianne.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to talk to you, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm a fan of the podcast. So
thank you.
Anytime, you want to continue the conversation, I'll be there.
Anytime. I know you're a busy one, so I'll find time to squeeze in at some point in the future. But for now, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. It's been a blast. I know you got more to do, so good luck with all of them. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adrianne.